Well, hello everybody, this is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to another Critique of the Week. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, the purpose of the Critique of the Week is to give that workshop experience to people who might not have it. It's a really good thing to be able to hear feedback on your poems and hear what strangers think, and that's what we try to do here. Not everybody has access to a bunch of friends who are good writers and can share their thoughts on poems or an MFA program with professors and things like that. So we do the Critique of the Week here to give that experience to people. And so please do leave your comments in the notes and the chat window and all that stuff. And please do turn your phone sideways if you're watching on a phone so you can see the poem in full screen. So you make sure things are working. People are slower to come on board with Facebook. Facebook is not as much into, I think they've kind of given up on being a video platform. There was a while where they were really, they wanted to sort of become the Facebook, or I mean the YouTube of the world, and take over some of that market share. And I think they've kind of given up on that. If you look at our video views, they're down on Facebook, but no other platform. It's only because they were artificially boosted for so long. So it doesn't randomly pop into people's feeds like it does. So make sure, if you need a reminder, make sure you go to our events page on Facebook if you're on Facebook, and you can see you're going, and then you'll get a reminder notification. But of course, if you're regular, it's always the same time, noon Eastern, and you can join us then. So let's see who's here. So Nate Jacobs is here, Mark Grinier's here, Dana Broadhead's here. Good to see you all over on Facebook, on YouTube. We've got Clayton Clark. Good to see you from La Cañada. Clayton was here over the weekend for the poetry day we had in Wrightwood, California. That was a lot of fun, having a live in-person event for the first time since the pandemic started. So great to hear. Open Dance Ensemble. Good to see you from the Big Apple. Okay, so we have two poets today, and the first is Anita Cabrera, and let's go. It's Richard Westheimer's here. Hello, Richard. Okay, so here is Anita Cabrera's poem, the first poem for today. I think I gotta slide this back a little. Okay, so this is Anita Cabrera, and celebrating our Savior's birthday at the Blue Lamp for Carlos Guitarlos. And if you don't know who Carlos Guitarlos is, I don't know. Maybe if the poem probably tells you enough. It's a real person, a real musician. I'd heard of Carlos Guitarlos, but wasn't completely familiar, so I just looked it up a few minutes ago. Here we go. Celebrating our Savior's birthday at the Blue Lamp for Carlos Guitarlos. Something's a little weird with the lighting here. It's a very smoky day outside. We got the drift smoke from the northern front. We've been pretty much spared this summer from the smoke. Like the winds have been blowing it all, east instead of south. But we got a lot of smoke, and maybe that's changing the lighting. Anyway, Anita Cabrera, celebrating our Savior's birthday. Carlos Guitarlos didn't throw the first punch. He clawed tight the neck of his Stratocaster with one hand, flung a chair off the stage with the other, landed it next to the men's room, where the bouncer once got his face sliced corner to corner, a diagonal score. Carlos Guitarlos stopped Dust My Broom mid-croon, so Ramona turned on the jukebox and served Harry the horse a last rusty nail for the road. Tables flew, beer bottles crashed, the dancers ducked out of the way. The strings of lights kept blinking. The baby-faced cops who led Carlos Guitarlos away never knew that only the day before he'd dragged his amp to the library's teddy bear tea party and played for free. They didn't hear him wail, "Here I come," while plucking nickel-plated steel, sending Teddy clutching. Toddlers jumping to the blues. And that is the first poem here by Anita Cabrera, celebrating our Savior's birthday at the Blue Lamp. So first of all, I love the title. I mean, this kind of tells us everything we need to know to get into the poem. Maybe I'm gonna hang on a second. I'm gonna turn off this light. Maybe that'll fix the light. Let's Okay. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay. It's kind of like blinding out of this way. It's doing it again. Oh, never mind. That didn't help. Anyway, so I love the title because it sets the stage for where we are. It lets us know, no pun intended, it lets us know what's going on. And, it sets the time and place, but with specific details, which is nice. So we even know that, our Savior's birthday, I assume it's Christmas, at the Blue Lamp. Let me try to fix this. This lighting is really annoying me. Let's see. I'm going to change the settings here. Let me turn the contrast down a little bit. That's a little better. There we go. Okay. So, celebrating our Savior's birthday at the Blue Lamp, and you get to know where we are. And the Blue Lamp is a specific detail, which is really nice. Like we get to really feel like what's going on. And Carlos Guitarlos didn't throw the first punch is a great first line too. Like, because we're celebrating our Savior's birthday. I mean, there's sort of a comedy and a drama in that first line. There's because it's our Savior's birthday, we know it's Christmas at the Blue Lamp, we're celebrating it. And then all of a sudden, Carlos Guitarlos didn't throw the first punch. It's a great line break there too. It's sort of, there's a tension there. Like all of a sudden at the first punch, like we get in this like violent situation all of a sudden, but we don't expect it at all. So we're thrown right into the fight, which is just a great way to start. I always make fun of Megan because she she wants something to happen in the first 2 minutes of a movie or else she's bored. And it's kind of the same way in a poem. And something interesting happens here in the first line. So we're already hooked in. It's just a great start. You couldn't get a better start to a poem, I think. He clawed tight the neck of his Stratocaster with one hand. I think clawed tight is a little bit of a cliche-ish. You maybe find a better way to say that phrase. The neck of his Stratocaster with one hand, flung a chair off the stage with the other, landed it next to the men's room, where the bouncer once got his face sliced, corner to corner, a diagonal score. I feel like this a little bit is maybe too many details about the bouncer, because the bouncer is not really the central part of the story. And so maybe one detail, condense this into one line. I'd probably just cut off the diagonal score. I just leave it sliced corner to corner. Because it's just too much time, given the quickness of the poem. It's not a very long poem. It's too much time devoted to the bouncer. That's interesting that people are saying they remember this poem. Anita actually, it might be this poem. Anita mentioned that when we did a lightning round, there was a poem. I think maybe this poem was submitted. I don't remember it. Which it shows you how little. There's just so many poems flying into my brain. But both Clayton and Richard Westheimer and Clayton Clark both saying they remember this. It could be. So anyway, I would cut off the diagonal score. Carlos Guitarlos stopped dust my broom mid croon. I like that broom croon little internal rhyme there, but it's not too heavy-handed. So Ramona turned on the jukebox and served Harry the horse a last rusty nail for the road. So really good details again here. Oops, details. That's how you spell details, if anybody's wondering. Tables flew, beer bottles crashed, and dancers ducked out of the way. The strings of lights kept blinking. I think strings of lights kept blinking is maybe a little you could find a better description for that. Description. I can't spell anything. Because I don't know. Strings of lights. I mean, I know they're the strings, I guess they're stringed stage lights, very cheap variety of stage lights. And maybe that's part of the point. But I think it's just could be a more interesting way to put that. And then there's also this line break here, which there's no reason to break after the. Nope. Pat, nope, sorry. Pat, gotta talk to you later. I should have turned this off. Okay. Anyway. So, yes, I think there's a better way to describe that, probably. The baby-faced cops. Let's see, Open Dance Ensemble says Rusty Nail in caps. Yeah, I wonder. The rusty nail. Let's see, a last rusty nail. I think that's fine. I mean, there is a little moment here where you're not sure it's not a real rusty nail. Like for a second, I thought he served Harry the horse. Like, I imagine him like maybe hitting him with a plank with a nail in it or something. But then you realize it's a drink, I think. And so I think it's fine that way. I think that works okay. But maybe, I mean, it is a proper noun, I guess. Anyway. And Harry the horse, is Harry the horse someone related to Carlos Guitarlos? I'm not sure about that either. That's something I wondered. But these are kind of details that are really good, precise details. And you don't really need to know specifically what they're referring to. They just sort of add to the feel of the poem. The baby-faced cops who led Carlos away never knew that only the day before he dragged his amp to the library's teddy bear tea party and played for free. They didn't hear him wail, "Here I come," while plucking nickel-plated steel, sending teddy-clutching toddlers jumping to the blues. So it's a really good ending too. I like the sort of progression. There's like an arc to this poem. I feel like it could dig a little deeper and sort of expand on this stuff. So, and maybe part of it is that there's 2 stanzas here, and so it feels like there's room for more here just for the balance of it. You could go more, I mean, you could say more about, there's just room for more detail and more sort of storytelling. Tables flew and beer bottles crashed. You could tell the story of this fight a little more, and I have like patience for it. I'm not bored by it yet, so I think you could fill in with more detail about the fight. And then a little more detail here too. The baby-faced cops who led Carlos away never knew, and that could be a kind of setup for a repetition, where they never knew this, they never knew this, they never knew this. And you could stretch that out a little more just to make it feel a little more vivid, I think, too. So in the end of this poem, there's just opportunity for more detail. And I think one of the reasons why I'm sort of would like a little more details, because the details are told pretty well in this poem. And so I think they'd be good, it'd still be engaging to have more detail going on. The baby-faced cops who led Carlos away never knew that only the day before he dragged his amp to the library's teddy bear tea party. So dragged his amp is a good way of saying that. It's a very, very vivid description. I like that. They didn't hear him wail, "Here I come," while plucking nickel-plated steel, sending teddy-clutching toddlers jumping to the blues. I don't know. I think I just like this poem. It's nice. It could be expanded with a little more detail to make it sort of feel more connected, but I like the arc of it. I like the way it works. I think it's a pretty good poem. Let's see what, and if we did, maybe we revised it, if it was critiqued before. Let's see what everybody's saying about this. Nate Jacobs says, "Fun story, and here I am wanting more chapters, more story." Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, you could just, it almost like, there just feels like there's a lot more here you could tell. And I'm engaged enough where I'm sort of, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I think what Nate Jacobs was saying too, is that I'm disappointed when it's over because I want to hear more. I mean, not only, like what I was saying with this never knew, like there's so many things the cops never know, right? You could go into the entire, like, lots of descriptions. Like, I want to know what Carlos Guitarlos' regular day is. Not just the tea party, but like what he came home to after the tea party. And, things like that could really bring this poem to life even more than it is, because I think it's already very evocative. Let's see. So Nate, again, I like the baby-faced cops of the final stanza know nothing of Carlos's second career as a children's performer. Seems making them a fan from their own childhood could also be an interesting approach. Then say more about the rift between Carlos's 2 lives. Yeah, that's interesting. There's just a lot of opportunity for more of the story to be told. Mark Whittier says the ending lines, teddy clutching toddlers, etc., are a little hard to pronounce out loud. Yeah, I was going to mention that too, so I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot. Sending teddy clutching toddlers. It's part of the line break too, and just teddy clutching toddlers is a bit of a mouthful. You kind of have to slow down just to say it, and feel free to to leave room for like articles and things like that, and say it just like sending toddlers clutching their teddy bears, jumping to the blues, and or just some more natural phrasing than that, than cramming all the detailed words there together. Makes it a little less trippy. Although Hege Anita Jacobson Lepre says, love teddy clutching toddlers. So maybe, I mean, the other thing, the thing I was thinking is moving toddlers up there might make it a little less trippy. And then you could break it there. And then that would, and then, pull this line up too. And then that would, I don't think teddy clutching wasn't a problem for me to say. I feel like it was the pause in the toddlers with the alliteration and those hard consonant sounds that make it trippy. But I think if it was pulled up to the line before, you wouldn't have that like slight pause that you do when you get to a line break, just because as your eyes scan back, and you would sort of see toddlers coming. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's that you see the T coming and you can sort of prepare for the T as you're reading. That could really be it. I think maybe you'd trip over it less if you pulled that up. Lindsay Daniels Cowden has a great suggestion. Start at the end with him being bailing him out of jail, or him being bailed out of jail. And Nate Jacobs says, was the Children's Party a community service sentence for his last fight? He seems to be a capable fighter. Let's see. And Laurel Benjamin says, I like the punchy quality of the language, larger than life characters. Yeah, I do. This really, it feels like, I think I feel a sense of wanting more story. I'm really interested in knowing more about Carlos Guitarlos' life right now. And, this feels like it could be one of those, several page long poems where we see different aspects of it and things like that. Like that's the only sort of downside is I feel like this like wanting of more, where I don't feel quite satisfied, I guess, because I'm interested and engaged and then it's just over. Whereas this really could be expanded. There's a, do I have it here? It's way over somewhere. There's a, Dana Gioia. I think he read this on the Rattlecast. So check out Dana Gioia's Rattlecast. He read the Ballad of, whatever it was, sort of an outlaw, Mexican, blue or guitarist, I think, from, I can't remember the exact story. It was Dana's, like great grandfather or something, but just look Dana Gioia in the Ballad of Autofill. And that stretches out for a whole chapbook length poem, just the story of, his great granduncle or whoever that was. And that kind of reminds me of this. Like I'm just as engaged. I want like a whole like story. Like I want more. So, and Laura Benjamin says, reminded me of short fiction could easily be that form. And Nate Jacob says, why this has the second punch? Yeah, give me more, says Nate Jacob. And so I think everybody's saying they just want more, and that's my sense too of this poem. I just want more. So I think this is something to extend. And keep going with. Okay, let's move on to the next poem. And I don't want to neglect YouTube. So let me read YouTube's first. So Clayton Clark says, I love that it ends with the toddlers just wanted to feel a little deeper. Yeah, too. Like it feels like there's just more underneath the surface of this. And Dick Westheimer says, maybe fill in with more about his connection with playing for kids. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much more. I just want more told. And Open Dance Ensemble, I'm not sure who that is, says maybe start with a teddy bear story, then the club scene. Yeah, you could shift around these things too and play with that. It's kind of a matter of, like you've got a good story here, which is very well told and visualized. It's a matter of like how much do you want to tell and what, which to tell first. And you kind of got to play with that. And unfortunately, if you had a writing group, you could be working on this and sort of A/B testing and seeing which version gets more of a reaction. But we only do these critiques one time, so it's tough to say. So my general opinion of this is that it's a good poem that could be better, that could just give us more. And I think there's just more to more love. It has more love to have, share. So that's my suggestion, is extending it and playing with like the order of the scenes and things, and seeing what evokes the most, the biggest emotional reaction. So we really get to feel, Carlos Guitarlos as a character. Okay, let's move on to the next poem before while we still have time. And here is Trinity. A three-legged dog begs for more attention than the four-legged version. What happened to it? Shouts a guy riding shotgun in a pickup stopped at the light. The tripod cure, an icebreaker, invites commiseration. Audible sighs from the lady waiting for the bus. A head tilt. Impossible to still the quivering stub when the belly's rubbed. This disabled dog you did not birth confers a measure of undeserved saintliness. Makes you Mother Teresa to the canine world. That one missing limb of the dog you pull along is why the fellow with a shopping cart on Bayshore Boulevard finds the courage to declare, I wish that we could get to know each other and go recycling together. I love that ending. That's a great ending. And go recycling together. Like what a strange, sort of funny, interesting detail there that is. I wish that we could get to know each other and go recycling together. So this is another poem where I think it's there's a really nice arc and nice sense of meaning making to the poem. Like we go through, we think about this dog, and then we get to the point, where we understand a little bit better about why we're drawn to a dog like that from it. So there's a nice arc in the way that a poem is like a magic spell that transforms something and plants new ideas into your head, and there's this sense of discovery. So I think it really works for that. Both these poems do. The thing that I you notice I tripped over some. A lot of the line breaks are like breaking after what, they're very unnatural, and there's sort of some sort of clunky constructions. So let's sort of talk about, try to clean this up a little bit. A three-legged dog. And Trinity, which I assume is the name of the dog. I think that's one thing. A lot of times we talk about titles setting the stage for the poem and sort of making a scene and letting us see like what kind of landscape we're living in. But this is a different type of title, which adds a sense of mystery. Like we don't exactly know what Trinity means, and of course Trinity is try for three-legged. So eventually we kind of understand. I think somebody named the dog Trinity because it had three legs, I think. And so there's sort of a mystery there to what the title means, and then you kind of slowly realize what the title is, which is the dog's name. And I think that's a nice effect. If you're not using the title to set the scene, then this is another way that you can make the title serve some purpose. So I think that works well too. A three-legged dog begs for more attention than the, and then we get the too. So these breaks, they just make you sort of trip over the reading of it. So why not like break it here and there, a three-legged dog begs for more attention than, or maybe even, break it there. You got to kind of determine how you want the lines to feel and the sort of pacing you want people to read with. But breaking it with those articles and like at the very beginning of sentences is, especially when they're shorter poems, because you're kind of reading slower in general in the shorter poems. It's less like prose. And that leads to longer pauses, which sort of trip up the non-natural line breaks too. So I'd, if you look at like someone like, we talk about this, but if you look at someone like James Tate with his later poems where they stretch all across the page and the line breaks are just sort of anywhere, that's to de-emphasize the sense of line, so you're not distracted by the sounds. But in a shorter poem, you're listening to the sounds a lot more closely, just naturally, I think. And so breaking on words like this, unless you're really focusing on the sounds, like the lines are really short and you just want to hear the syllabics of each line or something like that, then it's better to just do it natural way so you don't notice and think about it and trip over it. What happened to it? Shouts a guy riding shotgun. So if the if the what happened to it was its own line, then shouts a guy riding shotgun is like a natural break, and we just feel much more natural. We flow through the poem a lot more if we broke it like there and there. In a pickup stopped at the light. The tripod cur. What's a cur? I imagine a cur is a in my head it was that like the little wheelchair kind of thing that a dog has, but I'm not really sure. Cur. Oh, an aggressive dog. One that is in poor condition, especially a mongrel. I've never heard that word before. Cur. Let's see. Also, a medium-sized hunting or working dog with a short coat that was developed in the southern U.S. and is sometimes considered to comprise one or more breeds. Also, a surly or cowardly fellow. So the tripod cur. So I was imagining that like he had... Yeah, so it's probably just me, but I was imagining that was a word I didn't know for one of those, it had the wheels with the back, you know what I'm talking about, and that was the icebreaker, but the dog itself is the icebreaker. So I wonder how common that word is, because everybody, cur means dog. So Dave Jacobs already says Trinity should be the dog's name, and he'd be a great character to add into the Carlos Guitarlos universe. Jenny Middleton says, cur means dog, and cur can also be used an insult too. Yeah, I've never heard that word. I just wonder how common that is. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so the tripod cur, an icebreaker, invites commiseration, audible sighs from the lady waiting for the bus, a head tilt, impossible to still the quivering stub when the belly's rubbed. I like the stub when the belly's rubbed. I think that's a great line. But the impossible to still the quivering, that's a clunky line. Clunky. And so I love, so is there a better way to phrase this? I love the idea of it, the idea of it being impossible to still the quivering stub, but impossible to still. And maybe to still is it just it's a verb that's not used that often in that way. Maybe that's the issue, but it just feels a little clunky. Impossible to still the quivering stub. Maybe this is a place to refer to the dog a little more. Like you can shift it to he or she, whatever, for the dog. He couldn't still the quivering stub, or something more simple than impossible to still. I just trip over that. The disabled dog you did not birth. See, I'm not sure. You did not birth. I mean, we're assuming. I mean, I think it's safe to assume that we know that the speaker of the poem didn't give birth to a dog. So I don't know if that's necessary. But if it was just the disabled dog confers a measure of undeserved saintliness, there's ways that the phrasing just can be more interesting. A poet that I always love for his sense of phrasing is Alan Shapiro, for using different kinds of syntax that are both have so much variety, but then also feel natural at the same time. And here we don't get a lot of the way that the sentences are operating. We don't get a lot of sort of variety on them. The disabled dog you did not birth confers a measure of undeserved. So I'm talking about like the variety of like the simplest way of what I'm talking about is the line length itself. So we sort of get these long sentences or like full long sentences over and over again with nothing short. There's no variety to it. And so maybe here's an opportunity to make this like two quick short sentences instead, just to break up the flow and make it not feel sort of repetitive in the way that the sentences are structured, if that makes sense. I'm not sure. Let's see. The disabled dog confers a measure of undeserved saintliness, makes you Mother Teresa. So like, I don't know. The disabled dog confers a saintliness undeserved. He looks up at the Mother Teresa of the canine world, something like that. That just shifts the rhythm of it a little bit, so we get more variety of the sounds. That one missing limb of the dog you pull along is why the fellow with a shopping cart on Bayshore. See, so this is the same kind of thing. Like, we get this sort of preamble in this one long sentence where they could be broken up and mixed around in different ways of writing the sentences themselves. So, but that one missing limb of the dog you pull along is why the fellow with the shopping cart on Bayshore Boulevard finds the courage to declare, I wish... So I mean, maybe you could just cut off this part and just jump into the you just say it's why, and get quicker to this. There's a lot of clunky. It's just a lot of clutter kind of here for no real reason. So it's why the fellow with the shopping cart on Bayshore Boulevard finds the courage to declare, because we know we're talking about the three-legged dog. We've been talking about it the whole time. So we don't need to repeat the one missing limb you pull along. I mean, there's just not enough variety in the length of the lines, in the way that the sentences are shaped, I guess. It's a very subtle thing that you kind of have to, I don't know, like, think a lot about. But anyway, but I do love this ending. And the detail, too, the Bayshore Boulevard finds the courage to declare, I wish that we could get to know each other and go recycling together, which is a great, funny last line. I love that last line. So, again, I like this poem a lot. Just some things to kind of clean up. Nate Jacob says the phrasing in the final stanza is confusing. Is it the missing legs you pull along? Almost like you have that leg on a leash as well. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So all of a sudden there's a you, and we're talking to the dog, and you pull along. So there's a little bit of I think that's why I suggest introducing a he or something there. So you could use the pronouns to help us sort of guide who's who, because it does feel like who's you that we're talking to all of a sudden. But it's the dog that pulls along these missing limbs. So let's see. Yeah. Mark Griner says the tone changes with the third stanza, along with the focus switching to the lady when before it was on the dog. Why? Yeah, that's a good thing to point out. I should have noticed this, but I really didn't. I was focused on other things. But the disabled dog, we get the you here. You did not birth. So we switch in the third stanza, talking to, yeah. So in the beginning, so if you're going to have a you, it should be addressed to you sort of the whole time, so that we don't feel, it doesn't feel like that shift, like, oh, we're talking to you all of a sudden? I thought you were talking to me. And I don't know. So you need to introduce a you earlier if you're going to phrase, set it up like this. But why not I? This just feels like a substitute for I. The disabled dog I did not birth. And then it doesn't, the one missing limb of the dog you pull along. Yeah. So if it was the one missing limb of the dog I pull along, and you're sort of pulling the dog, but like Nate Jacob says, it's a little ambiguous because it feels like you're just pulling the missing limb, like you've got the missing leg on a string, So that's a little awkward too. You're right. So Nate Jacob says another nice story. Tighten it up and keep the focus on the dog. I think you've got a great character. Yeah, I think that's maybe the best way to do it, is to keep the focus on the dog. Like think of it as like a character sketch of the dog, and then we won't get this sort of like shiftingness. You can talk about the dog as if you're just describing the dog. Trinity. You could even say, if you want to get sort of a sense of personal, our three-legged dog, if you want, and then just talk about Trinity and describe Trinity, and then at the end, Trinity pulling his limb along, and Trinity's why the shop, guy with the shopping cart stops and says this. Like, we get the whole story and the relationship to the speaker too. Even if we just focus on Trinity and don't have that you kind of in there otherwise. So I think that's a good piece of advice. Thanks, Nate and Mark, for those explanations. Let's see. So over on YouTube, I want to make sure we get some. Current canine. This is Open Dance Ensemble. Current canine context means to me a scruffy dog. Yeah, that kind of feels right. I just didn't know that word. Maybe it's not regional to where I grew up or whatever. I feel like some of the language covers up the music, says Clayton Clark. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So that's just kind of it. So this poem I think I would clean up a little bit. This poem we could make a little tighter and shorter, actually, I think. And the other poem, which is such a great character, expand and make longer and show us more of Carlos Guitarlos. We all really like that. So I hope that's good advice, Anita, and thanks for sharing these poems. Now let's look at the other two. Move on to the second poet, and this is Veronica Sills. This is Equal Tides, and so there's two very short poems here. Equal Tides. I go to the beach in December, expecting a revelation, a solution in the coexistence of sand and snow. Polar sides of an equation can decipher each other. But the ocean belongs to the winter, just like it belongs to late July. It still wraps past the horizon. It still lulls the shore. It still whispers hello and goodbye. So this is really nice. I really like short poems. They're really hard to do, actually, in a way that makes them interesting and sort of evocative in such a tight, concise, confined space. And I think it really takes off right here. But the ocean belongs to winter, just like it belongs to July. It still wraps past the horizon. It still lulls the shore. It still whispers hello, goodbye. We get the July goodbye rhyme, too, which sort of makes it subtly, they're far apart, but it makes it subtly click a little bit. And we get the repetition with the it still. Great phrasing. It sort of like flowers out naturally from these lines. It's just a really nice, really great ending. I really love that. I go to the beach in December, and so in the title too plays into what we're talking about at the end. Equal Tides. I think that works as a title too. It's not the kind of title where you would see it in the table of contents and sort of be drawn to it, but it works for this poem. I go to the beach in December, expecting a revelation. And so with such a short poem, I think that the trick is to have as much like condensed evocative image as possible. Like the most, only the most important details should stand out. And all clutter should be removed because you have so little space that you're telling the story. I go to the beach in December expecting a revelation. I think it's a really good start. I think that's good. But then a solution in the coexistence of sand and snow. I love the concept of this. But because a revelation and a solution are the same, you're sort of just repeating. It feels unnecessary. Let's see. So Bill Cannon says I go to the beach in winter. And maybe that would be good too. I go to the beach in winter because you repeat the winter here, and then that makes the July a little stronger when you pull out the July. I think that's a good suggestion, Bill. So I'd say that winter too. And I was hoping I'll be alone there. Which is a good say. So a solution in the coexistence is a very clunky, it's a very technical polysyllabic kind of vocabulary here, it's just too much for this poem, I think. Bill Cannon suggests hoping I'll be alone there. So I go, and I kind of like something like that. I go to the beach in winter expecting a revelation, hoping to be alone with the sand and snow. So we get that sand and snow mix. Something like that. That's a little less, long word, inchord and wordish, Polar sides of an equation can decipher each other. And again, this is these two lines just have a lot of technical language in them that feels out of place in the poem and throws you out a little bit, I think. So I would just stick with the image there. Polar sides of an equation. So is there a way you can say that's just like rooted in image? You want to say the heat and the cold and the dryness and the wetness are sort of opposites. But is there a way you can, I don't know, that's the one line. This is the main line that feels wrong, to me. The poem sort of unlock itself and sort of work really well, I think, if you just find the right way to say this, that focuses more on image and less technical, basically. Let me pull up, because the best poet that I know of for these kind of short poems is Mike White. And let me see if we can show an example of his like very concise, because this feels a lot like one of those poems. Try to find one that's like the best example for this. Let's see. Oh, I should have put this on screen as I'm scrolling. Here, maybe this one. This is sort of similar. Maybe this is the most similar. This is Mike White's Happiness. Happiness fills a room, no one around to lift the thing. All those parts, after a while you give up, even dusting. And so that focuses so much on the image, which is really why it works. That's what I wanted to point out. Like if you look at these Mike White poems, and there are a bunch of them, Basho glimpsed, Miles from Anywhere, Nevada, head down, walking, nothing on his back but the moon. And you know, these are even tighter and smaller than, he's got a few longer poems, and this is a review of his book. Arms, angels do not exist, bombs exist. At someone's say-so, they fall from the clouds. They carry you off, you who to them weigh nothing. See, it focuses on the image and doesn't have this kind of, going back to the poem we're looking at here, doesn't have this kind of polar sides of an equation can decipher each other. That's just too much for a poem that's this condensed, I think. But otherwise, I think this is just really lovely. The description, the sand and snow together is a really interesting thing to be looking at. And maybe a way to explain that a little more, like to describe it in a way where, like how does it actually look with the sand on top of the snow? Like I imagine the snow is more white and the sand is more, tan color. And maybe there's some kind of like wetness where they mix. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to imagine what that would exactly look like. And maybe there's a way that you can describe with one quick line what it looks like that can also be these two polar sides, so it stays grounded in image rather than abstraction. And but then once we do that, like this transition where we go to the butt, from then on the poem is just great, but there's no revelation here. It just is like the opposites are the opposites, and there's nothing we can do to fix that. Everything that whispers hello also whispers goodbye, like the tides. It's a really nice poem. So it's just a matter of finding the right image to sort of convey this. You don't have to get into that abstract space where you're not. And the problem is when you go to abstraction, we're not as engaged sort of viscerally with the poem. And on a longer poem where we can have these like longer asides and go into different thoughts and things, that can work really well. But on a short poem, you sort of don't have the space to drift away into the abstract. You really want to stay in the image and in that one, we're getting this little nugget of a scene, and we don't want to ever leave it because it's sort of hard to have time to get back to it again, I guess maybe is the way to think of it. So describe that sand and snow in a way that talks about the sides of the equation without saying the sides of the equation deciphering each other. And I'm sure there's a way to like describe it that does that work. So that's the thing to play with, I think, with this poem. So Jason Brenner puts it like this: yeah, the meaning of those lines still lands fairly well to me, but improving the lyricism or image, like you mentioned, would really make it stand out. Yeah, that's the way to put it. Yeah, I mean, it just has more power if you can do it through image with lyricism instead of describing it abstractly. Let's see. So Hege Anita Jacobson Lepre says, I really enjoy these poems so far from environments I know. These are all enjoyable poems. We have good ones this week. Love the mood of Equal Tide's beautiful sentimentality. Laurel Benjamin says, decipher each other. Wonderful. And so maybe there's a way to stick with image. If you said, what do we say? Like hoping, what was that line that, let me find it. Oh yeah, Bill Cannon was saying, hoping I'll be alone there, saying something like that. What if we, let's see. I go to the beach in winter, expecting a revelation, hoping to be alone with the sand and snow as each one deciphers the other, something like that. You could pull that deciphering each other in to the sand and snow in sort of one line, so we just sort of cruise through it, and maybe that's the way to get rid of the abstract clunkiness of that a little bit. Let's see. So Mark Whittier says, the way the ocean whispers both hello and goodbye seems to be the revelation solution that is being sought here, a source of equanimity. Yeah, that's like the really cool ambiguity of the poem, that you could read it sort of that way. It leaves it open. It's a very airy kind of way to end the thing. Mark Whittier also suggests maybe this long line, we just stop it at polar sides of the equation. And that's another way to do it too. If you maybe that there's two things here that sort of are saying the same thing, and that's part of the way it feels a little long. I would really like a little more of that image though. What does the coexistence of sand and snow actually look like when you're sitting there on the beach in December? And describe that really, really briefly and concisely. But I think that, I don't know. I mean, that's the one line to play with in this poem. So work on that and see what you can come up with. Okay, this is good stuff though. Both. All three of these poems so far are really good. A Mood Ring is the next poem. I think we're just done with this. They're short, so that's okay. Those short poems are awesome poems too. Veronica Sills, Mood Ring. I wish I could grow a tree that could tell me what I was feeling. I'd know what shock of color was a flower from my branches, in which was a bird stopping along her way. I'd know when to feel pensive yellow, adventurous orange, and volatile red. And after watching the tree shed its leaves for the winter, I'd never again confuse bare branches for summer green lush peace. So Mood Ring. Interesting. I kind of felt like I read something wrong there. Let me read it again. I wish I could grow a tree that could tell me what I was feeling. I'd know what shock of color was a flower from my branches, and which was a bird stopping along her way. I'd know when to feel pensive yellow, adventurous orange, volatile red. And after watching the tree shed its leaves for the winter, I'd never again confuse bare branches for summer green lush peace. So interesting. So I love this concept of a tree. I wish I could grow a tree that could tell me what I was feeling. I really love that. That's just great. Like for a concept for a nice short poem, is really good. I know what shock of color was a flower from my branches. So here we get the my branches. Maybe that's what was confusing me when I read it the first time. Because I imagined it like outside my window or something, there'd be a tree. But then when it's my branches, all of a sudden it feels like I am the tree, or, the speaker, it's like growing literally from the speaker, like a tree's coming out of your head or something when it's my branches. So I'm not sure why it's my instead of the. And that sort of made me trip and made me wonder if I was reading something wrong. And which was a bird stopping along her way. I like the concept though. So what if that was just and we could leave it so that it could be an external tree. We don't have to go that far into surrealism. I wish I could grow a tree that could tell me what I was feeling. I'd know what shock of color was a flower from the branches, and which was a bird stopping along her way. I think it's better without the my. I'd know when to feel pensive yellow, adventurous orange. So see here, I feel like, so I love the beginning. I feel like there's something that it's not quite right. I'd know when to feel pensive yellow, adventurous orange, and volatile red. After watching the tree shed its leaves for the winter, I'd never again confuse bare branches for summer lush green peace. I don't know. So maybe it's just a matter of being unclear. So with a mood ring, you'd know how you're feeling. Or what your mood is. I'd know when to feel pensive yellow, adventurous orange, and volatile red. And after watching the tree shed its leaves for winter, I'd never again confuse bare branches for summer lush green peace. There's something that feels unclear about the second half of the poem. in the summer lush green piece is a very trippy. I trip over it too. Summer lush green piece. I mean, maybe if you were, but like, why would you confuse the bare branches? I don't know. I mean, there's an idea in there that's really interesting, which is confusing bare branches for peace. Like I'm trying to articulate this, but there's a really cool concept behind that, which is that like sort of like isolation, maybe like depression feels peaceful, and that's the confusion that we're talking about. Like that's kind of my interpretation of it. And I think that's a really good, really interesting sort of observation to make based on this sort of mood ring setup that we have for the tree. But it feels sort of, I don't know, it doesn't feel quite right. I'm trying to articulate how. I'm not sure. Let me see what people are saying. Maybe in talking about it more, yeah, I can't, I'm not really sure exactly what it is. So Nate Jacob says something about mood ring doesn't quite hit the mark. Nice imagery, but I can't make sense of it. Yeah. Laurel Benjamin says, this reminds me of the magical tree and the Nutcracker Ballet. The tree changes color, rises, etc. I wonder if this poem could be a bit more surreal. Yes, more surreal. Yeah, it could too. Is grow, this is Mark Grinier, is grow the right word in line 1? Could it be B? Should there be a comma in the middle of the last line? Yeah, that's the thing. So with my branches, yeah, good point for pointing that out. I wish I could be a tree, would sort of be the suggestion of the my. But I like growing a tree better. But maybe that's just me. I mean, if you want to go more surreal, growing a tree from like what part of my body, I mean, is it a tiny tree that you're growing from your wrist, or is it like growing out the top of your head? You could go a little into a surreal way and describe that a little more. Because I imagine it like out my window, like I'd planted it, But either way, you could explain how the tree comes to be. Like if you plant it, you can say how you would plant it, and describe that just a little bit, so then we know the place there. Yeah, so Jacob's getting this too. A mood ring doesn't necessarily tell you how to feel, it just reveals what you do feel. The tree here seems to be driving the emotions of the poet, which doesn't quite feel like what is intended. I kind of feel like that is, though. Like, I feel like the poem is about, like, not knowing how to feel and sort of wishing you could know, like, wishing a mood ring would actually work to help you decipher yourself. And I think that's a really interesting concept. I feel like it's not quite developed completely with the way, and I think it could be in this short of a poem. I don't think the poem really has to be longer. I just think that it's sort of the I'd know when to feel pensive yellow, like listing these colors and then saying I'd know when to feel. That feels like a bit of a wrong turn to me, and maybe it should. The poem really wants to go in like a different direction a little bit to explain the same point. That's what it feels like to me. And you could get, and instead of like I'd know when to feel, we just describe the colors, how the leaves would look, these colors, the pensive yellow, the adventurous orange and stuff. And then maybe the ending would have a little more punch if it was sort of, because really what the ending is telling us, that you're confusing bare branches for peace. So like emptiness is being confused for peace by the speaker. And it's really telling us that the speaker doesn't know when to feel what. And so we're sort of told here what the conclusion is. And maybe that's the reason it doesn't really like hit home at the end. Because it's sort of telling us something we were already told. So maybe if you just stuck with the colors, you have to play with this and see. Or maybe it's a completely different, wrong direction kind of. And you want to go more surreal and take a different tack. Because, listing colors is always a very, it's not a very strong thing to do. It's not a strong list to make. Because as soon as you start listing color, we sort of know you're going to go to different colors. And then it doesn't have a lot of, it's not as engaging. It's like listing. It's similar to like counting or something, because like 2 and 3 and 4 are going to be there. So you kind of stop paying attention on that level of like, what's the next word going to be? Because a color's coming and it's not as interesting. So maybe listing the colors is just not the right way to go. Or maybe making it shorter and not saying I know when to, the I know when to feel line. I'm not sure, but I just love the setup though. And I kind of want a little more detail just to be able to see clearly how this tree is working. And then I love the concept at the end too of the confusing bare branches. I think summer green lush peace is too much. Like if it was just, I'd never again confuse bare branches for the green lushness of peace or something like that. The summer green lush peace is just a very, you want hyphens, like it's like a noun phrase or something. It's just too much. But if it was, I'd never again confuse bare branches and you just said it, in an actual clause instead of smushing it all together. I think that is a good ending. So it's sort of just, wiring the beginning to the ending in the way that's most effective in such a small space. And again, look at the Mike White poems, which are just great examples of how he does transitions in such a small space. And, you can just go to rattle.com and type in Mike White, and you'll see he's got like 8 of them that we've published or something. Maybe not that many, maybe 6. Let's see. Laura Bender says, I'm picturing the Rattle Ekphrastic Challenge artwork for this month. That's interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so that's good stuff. Oh, it's been an hour. Let me look over at YouTube and see what people on YouTube are saying. Yeah, Clayton Blackman says those last 2 lines, not feeling it. Yeah, it just doesn't have the punch it should have. Like you sort of expect something that's like, whoa, that has that little, that feeling at the end. And it's not really there yet. Richard Westheimer says, I'd never again confuse. Is so conceptual and ambiguous. I think that's where I lose my bearings in the poem. It's like the air coming out of a balloon of the poem. Interesting way to put it. Yeah, maybe. Open Dance and Silence says put the I'd know when to feel lines first, then the poem makes more sense. Let's see. And Clayton Clark says the second half feels like prose. I never get confused. Is that the poem you're talking about? The second half feels like prose. It does, yeah. I'd never know. Yeah, it's just not as tight as the first half. So I don't know. Work on that second half and find a way to weave that concept together. Let's see. Okay, so I think that is it for the critique of the week today. Last week I did a drawing, and I made a mistake, and somehow, so when you get the data from Submittable, it comes in a spreadsheet, and the first and last names are switched, so you can't really see this right now, but and somehow I sorted them separately, and so first names were not connected to their last names when I did the let's see, insert copied cells, shift cells right there we go. So you kind of have to, I don't know if you're following, but I had like Ben Acers instead of Kevin Acers, and like Veronica Sills, it was like Anita Sills, and they weren't real people, so we're gonna have to do the drawing again, so I can fix this, because I picked the people with the last names that appeared, and I meant to set this up before the show started, but I forgot about it. So you're going to have to hang out with me for 1 second. I'm going to get the list. And, okay. So I got the list going. And we're going to go to random.org again. And we're going to get a new drawing. So it's actually... here, you're just looking at the picture of me. Here you go. So this is random.org again. Going to the list randomizer up at the top. We'll paste our list in. And these are actual people's names. So we actually have, Courtney Black and Oliver Bliss. These are real people. Kevin Acers is real. Not the mix-up I had last week. And now we're going to hit randomize. And this is going to be the next group of people that are pulled out. Anita Larrick. We see her on here a good amount. So there's Miss Thomas. There's Lois Villamere, Tamara Luckenbill, Catherine Green, Anita Larrick. So we'll do those. And then, as always, I'm going to pull out somebody to make sure we have, a good amount of content. And so these will be the next 5 people that are pulled at random the next 5 weeks, and then we'll add someone else to sort of complement, like I'm making some kind of wine and food comparison or something, and so we get a nice good show of two poets that work well together and that are different enough, in their sort of level of skill and length and things like that. So anyway, it'll be Miss Thomas, Lois, Tamara, Catherine, Anita next up, and that is going to be your critique of the week for the day. Thanks everybody for joining me. It's 4 really nice poems with a lot to work with. I think in all these poems, they're all really close in different ways. It was interesting to read them. All have sort of concepts like they're about something that's interesting, which is always really good to see in poems and nice writing too. So thanks for sharing those. It was Veronica Sills once again, and Anita Cabrera. And that's me it for the critique of the week this week. This week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Deborah P. Kalaji. And Deborah is a haiku poet primarily, although she's really into science fiction poetry as well. She's been part of the Science Fiction Poetry Association too. But she's a big figure in the haiku community. Her book, Highway of Sleeping Towns, that comes from a haiku that we published in Rattle. And it's just a really wonderful book, haiku. It's like when you read through a really good book of haiku and every haiku is actually good, it's a really good reading experience. So we're going to be talking about haiku a lot. We're also going to be talking about the tradition of haiku and her trip to Japan. She had a 2-week trip, or more than 2 weeks, a couple of years ago. And so that'll be interesting to talk about. We're also going to talk about other things too, in different forms, and why she's drawn to forms like that, the Japanese forms, like the renge. She wants to talk about things like that. And the next guest on the Rattlecast is going to be my internet or computer's being slow today. Let's see. Not the next guest. The next prompt is going to be, you've been driving for hours on a long, empty stretch of highway. It's miles and miles of nothing but desert landscape, no rest stops, no gas stations. Just when you're starting to think you'll never see civilization again, a building comes into view. What is it? Write a poem about that. So that is your prompt for this week, to write a poem about like a road trip and something comes into view. And then we'll do that. We'll talk to Deborah P. Kalaji, and we'll have a great time with a week off for Rattlecast. It'll be great to get back into it. That's Rattlecast 111, number 111. Sunday, September 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Like always, we'll see you then. Hope you have a great weekend in the meantime. Goodbye.